5 verses. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. And when he saw that this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for the public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. Today I want to talk about encouragement to pray, which I see in this passage, and I'll refer to some of the other verses a little later. This particular story gives us, I believe, great encouragement to pray at this particular time, the time in which we're living. And so, first of all, I want to point out to you the context. Now, this is the early Christian community. They've just got started, they've had the day of Pentecost, things are happening, they've been blessed, but persecution was coming. Stephen had been persecuted and stoned, and now Herod, the leader of the Jewish state as such, he had James killed, and then he arrested Peter. You see, the idea was in the ancient world, if there was any movement that threatened the government or threatened the political power, the idea was remove the leaders, and that probably was the end of the movement. And so that's why James was killed, and that's why Peter was arrested. And it was a very popular move for Herod. The Jews, probably when it says there the Jews, probably means the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, those who made up the Sanhedrin. They were the one who loved this because they saw the early Christian community was a serious threat to their power and to their message. They were religious, but they didn't know God. They didn't know the freedom of knowing God's grace and mercy. And so this is what was happening. And then we read in verse 5, Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. Peter's in prison, the church met together, and they're earnestly praying to God for him. Please note this, prayer is actually relating to God. That's the fundamental thing about prayer. We all know that through faith in the Lord Jesus, we come into a relationship with God. But the way that that relationship becomes a reality, day by day, is through prayer. Prayer is the basis for that. Prayer is the fundamental issue. You know that prayer is simply talking to God. That's the simplest way you can define prayer, talking to God. I often think about it, it's like a marriage. You know, years and years ago, I can think of my relationship with my wife. My wife is a very level-headed, stable person. She probably couldn't say the same thing about her husband. He's not always level-headed, and he's not always stable. He can be up and down. He can be very emotional. Often my moods can depend on whether my football team wins. I pray that they'll win on Saturday. I say, oh, Lord, please let them win, so that I'll feel good on Sunday, because I've got to preach. You may think I'm joking, but there's a lot of truth in what I'm saying. But anyway, sometimes when we've had a disagreement, I've just gone quiet and not talked to her. That's my way of being a stupid, silly, self-centered husband. That's the truth of it. But you see, when you don't talk, what happens? You don't communicate, you don't relate, you don't enjoy being together. Talking to each other and pleasantly and enjoying talking to each other is fundamental in a marriage, isn't it? For those of you who are married and know what it's like. It's fundamental. If you don't talk to one another, whatever else you do is just losing so much closeness and intimacy. And that's how it is with God. We communicate with God. We talk to God through prayer. It should be a daily thing, and we can do it at any time in the day, and we can do it anywhere. And you know, when you know that you need him and you need his help and you need his strength, you pray. Well, I do anyway. I've been in all sorts of situations over the years as a pastor. I can remember many years ago, I was involved when I was the pastor at Morphinvale Baptist Church. We used to regularly at Easter and Christmas conduct services in the local primary schools. And it was up to 4,000 children we had the privilege of sharing the gospel with for many, many years. I used my ventriloquist puppet for that. And I remember one day I was at a petrol station, I was filling it up, and then I went over to do something, and this young lady was just stood there, she's staring at me. And I was a lot younger then and slimmer, and so I thought, oh, well, she's probably impressed, you know. Anyway, she said, I know who you are. I looked, she said, you're the man with the puppet. I was really deflated, you know. But because that's what we did, year in and year out. We were there in those schools telling those kids about the Lord Jesus. And it was a wonderful, wonderful privilege. It was a thrill to do. But along the way, I heard that they were teaching transcendental meditation in one of the schools. This is quite a few years ago now, and I thought, no, I'm not going to let this go. So I contacted the education department and spoke to in those days they had a superintendent over areas of schools. And he wasn't very pleased that I called him. You know, he didn't think, oh, you've made my day. I just want a problem like this to do. So he was grumpy, it was difficult. But I said to him, transcendental meditation is a religious exercise. This school is making every child in the school meditate according to what I believe were Hindu principles. Oh, he said. He thought, well, let's go and have a look. I didn't expect that. So he took me to this particular school. I won't name the school. And we went into the school. Now, I remember when I started to tremble. I thought, what have I got myself into? What's going to happen? I was feeling pretty shaky, pretty, a little bit nervous. And so I prayed furiously, because it's the only